Here's my review of Wish. This is a very interesting movie because this movie is the celebration of Disney's 100th anniversary. And because of that, a lot of this movie may feel familiar, which is intentionally so to kind of get you to feel like this is Disney. So it's kind of like a lot of it feels like they're grabbing tropes from all these other classic movies, whether it's like The Lion King. Well, they'll reference The Lion King, and like they'll reference like parts of like a Scar, not necessarily by name, but like by like whether it's songs or tropes, along with other movies. And of course, the core concept of this movie is built on When You Wish Upon a Star. So a lot of it is intentionally kind of familiar, which by that logic, maybe it could make you feel like this is a movie that you've seen before. And it's a movie that I thought was good. I liked this movie. I thought it was good, but it's not like, especially for what is considered like the celebration of Disney's 100th year anniversary, it doesn't feel like it ever is maybe as good as the movies that is maybe paying tribute to. Like, it's not good as something like Beauty and the Beast. Of course, not as good as The Lion King, but it's still a solid movie. And I mean, so yeah, that's kind of feels like the whole point and the reason this movie was made is just, oh, we got to celebrate. Disney's like, oh, we got to celebrate our 100th anniversary, so let's kind of do stuff that we've done before. And because of that, you kind of get like Asha's group of friends that I thought was kind of like clearly supposed to be like similar to the Seven Dwarves, at least in terms of their personality. And like, and even it doesn't even feel like they're hiding. Like one of them is always sneezing or whatever. So, and that's intentionally the case. So a lot of it, you're kind of feeling like I've probably seen this before. And so the basic premise of this movie is like this king in this kingdom, whatever. King Magnifico is voiced by Chris Pine, and he does an excellent job. Chris Pine does an excellent job. He's the best part of this movie. I mean, that's many Disney movies. The villain's always the best part. And basically, he grants wishes to. He's like you after you come a certain age, like you send in your wish, and he like deems whether it's worthy or not. And that's kind of where it feels like that's where the main kickoff is. And he shows like Asha all these wishes that will never be answered. And that's kind of like the kickoff of this movie. And like because we find out like he's kind of almost using it to form his own power and just to get more powerful. And so, like I said, that core concept intentionally feels like, oh, this is very Disney. So like the whole thing revolves around wishes, and of course like a generic bad guy. But because he's voiced by Chris Pine, I mean, he's very fun to watch, and he's definitely got like probably the best song in the movie. Like I like this song. I don't know. I feel like some people have been hating on this song. Like this is the thanks I get. I think it's a pretty catchy song. I mean, it's nowhere near. It's like not even anywhere near close to some of Disney's villains' other songs, like the twisted version of a Friend Like Me from Aladdin, or Hellfire, like from Hunchback Notre Dame. It's nowhere near as good as that. And I mean, I don't really think any songs can ever be as good as those villain songs. But it's like intentionally feels like this kind of tune I've heard before. So it's one of these movies like you're watching it and you're like, oh, this is good because I like that. And you're liking it though because it's paying tribute to something else you like, not because you like it itself. And it just feels kind of weird. And it's never as good as the movies that it might be like referencing, but it's still good. And of course, like many Disney movies, you have the classic animal sidekick, who I didn't actually find that bad because he is voiced by Alan Tudyk, and he's basically just doing his Sandman voice that he does in the Harley Quinn show. And he's a lot of fun. I mean, the whole gimmick, of course, is like it's this very like kind of like British, almost fancy accent coming out of this goat, and that's kind of whole gimmick. But I thought it works well. And as for our main, I mean, Disney princess, basically, Asha, I mean, it feels like it's one of those kind of tropes where it's like, oh, I'm kind of quirky. She does like at a certain point. It's like, oh, I'm so excited, my mouth is doing it. And it feels like that's been the case between a lot of like the Disney protagonists of the past like 10 years. Kind of almost feels similar the same way to maybe Elsa, or I don't know. It's she's a character I didn't really feel like had that distinctive personality. And I thought she was fine. I enjoyed the movie. Like I liked this movie. But it's a lot of things, it doesn't feel like there's anything that truly stands out about it. Like to me, I just kind of got major Anna vibes, like from Asha. I mean, and that's the problem with this movie is it's just feels like a lot of the same, for which is just so ironic considering it's the 100th anniversary for Disney, and it thinks like which is clearly intentional, but it feels almost ironic because it's like, oh, this is 100th years, let's kind of prove how different we can be. But at the same time, they're kind of doing some similar things. Like you got like the seven dwarves essentially. You got the generic villain. Well, okay. In terms of generic, like I said, Chris Pine gives such a fun performance. He's very interesting. So I wouldn't really say it's that bad. And also, this movie, I don't know exactly what it is. Like, it clearly has more of a cartoony kind of 2D animation feel to it, which I'm pretty sure this still is like a 3D movie. But when you look at like characters, like the outlines on them, it almost looks like it was more hand drawn, which I appreciate. I think it allows for a nice change of pace. But I don't know. It just feels kind of off. Like you're watching a modern Disney movie, but the animation is reminding you of old, which is this all this stuff is intentional. Like the old animation, kind of basically the seven dwarves, and of course the generic villain is still fun. And this movie is visually stunning. I mean, you can't really talk about a Disney movie nowadays without saying that it looks beautiful. And this movie is no exception. So like I would say that this movie is good. It is not anything amazing. But in terms of animated movies that have come out this year, it's not even like close to being the best. Like I'd still say like Spider-Verse #1, then I probably say Nimona. I really liked Leo. I liked Elemental. So I think that this movie is good, but it feels like it's missing that one thing that really just makes you go, hmm. And also, there's like a grandpa character in here who like is who's like feels like he's very important, but at the same time, he just doesn't really have enough of a presence to be mentioned or to really care about and get invested in. So yeah, this movie is good, but it's just not great. So yeah, it's good, but I kind of just wish it was something more.